As you can see on the screen, we have some of the more, some of the more famous serial killers, both of fiction and reality fiction. We've got all three categories covered because we're going to be, nails out, because we're going to be talking about serial killers today, along with Tara Platt, who I'm sure is a serial killer, so we'll be very nice to her, because we don't want to make a serial killer mad. You ready, babe?
Woogie's out there. Before we do that, Woogie's out there. If you care to know, I know two really, really exquisite junkies also in Pflugerville who I can introduce you to.
Dope. All right, here we go. Ready? And 3, and 2, and 1. Hello, everybody. Happy hump day. Welcome to SIGLERinPLACE, the best damn show you will see all stinking week. We've got some great stuff to cover. We got 15 minutes of us stuff to cover. Then we're going to get into it with our friend and awesome person, Tara Platt. You guys have watched Monster of the Week.
I love that because she's author, she's
she got
actor,
a lot going on.
She's writer, she's everything.
So we're going to talk to her about her new book, Prep School for Serial Killers. I'm going to have an update on Shakedown, the Crypt Book 1. We're going to talk briefly about the Predator book, which is out, and we're going to talk about the 911 Bumrush, the charts. We're going to get to that in just a second. Everybody pay attention to that. You can pitch in, and it can be fun. And if we have time, we'll get to questions. Of course, don't forget, you can sign up for our newsletter at scottsigler.com/newsletter.
Hey,
and
Robert,
if you really want to hear what's going on, if you want the up-to-the-minute goodness, you want to smell all of that freshly wheeled cheese, then you can send a text, SIG text, to 855-955-5095. We do not abuse it. We only use it.
Did you just say they're freshly wheeled?
Freshly wheeled cheese. You know, that's how they put cheese in a wheel.
I mean, but then it ages for like 3 years.
Ours smells better. We're more like Green Bay cheese curds. You know, when you need your food to squeak in your mouth as if it's dying with your every bite, you want Green Bay cheese curds, the best darn cheese curds that will beg for their life.
Before we move on to the rest of the things tonight, because we have an interview with our friend Tara, we absolutely have received, and I really appreciate it. So many of you have sent in pictures, junkie pictures, pet pictures, all that stuff. We're not going to do that tonight, so we have enough time to talk about this cool new book and our friend Tara, but I have them and I love them, and if you want to send in pictures of yourself or your pets, I would love that. Any celebration.
Let's make this quick.
Info at
emptyset.com. We did mention we had something to say to Steve Rickyberg, and go ahead, baby.
Okay, you guys. So this 9/3/2022, which is this coming Saturday, Scott has a band rehearsal. He's probably not going to be there at all because he's not even going to be here at all. But we're going to do this. Steve hosts from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. at Pacific time every first Saturday of the month during the pandemic. Steve hosts Junkie Happy Hour this coming Saturday. I'll be there. I have a couple of friends who are also coming, but I also want to say this very day is the 10-year anniversary of Steve and Empty Set kind of coming together and working together. This is his first day of work with Empty Set 10 years ago. And he did that because I took over from our former audio editor. I don't know anything about audio, still to this day, probably. And he said, just so you know, we were at DragonCon, which is happening this weekend in Atlanta. And he said, just so you know, like I do audio editing if you ever need that. And here's the story, you guys. I'm going to keep it super brief. My actual legal name is A. My middle legal name is B. And I had been trying to edit the All Pro. And I got like 60% through. And then when I was going to DragonCon, I was trying to lessen the like drive time, the spinny wheel time on my computer. And so I deleted all my personal files, which I kind of denote with an AB. Like, oh, I have to send in this bill and prove that I sent it. My last little signature is _AB. And I did that, and I deleted all the work I'd done. So Steve did that. He happened to mention that, and I was like, oh. And he literally took 3 hard drives full of data and gave you guys the All Pro like just a couple weeks later. It was wonderful. And so we're so happy to still be working with him. We're so happy he approached us, he approached me at DragonCon, and I can't wait to work another decade with him.
All right. So let's move on to what do we got going on? Number 1, we have Predator. Eyes of the Demon, my latest book. I have one story in this book. It is out. You can go to scottsigler.com/books and you will see it there. And there it has all of the lovely links. Buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, BAM, Audible. Or get yourself an autographed copy. Click on that button. Goes over to Mysterious Galaxy. And sorry, if you place your order today, we're going to sign a bunch tomorrow. So you can get your goodies there. That is that. And then we have coming up tomorrow, CRYPT update, real quick. Turn that off. Let's see, back to Maine. So, we are working on second draft or final draft of the CRYPT, third draft, final draft of the CRYPT. We've got the edits back from an awesome editor from Athon. We're having a hell of a time. Only 18% into that right now. And I just wanted to show you guys what this looks like. We're having difficulty where, boom. Nope, got to go turn that off. If you can see, I have fuzzed out the letters so you can identify what the story is. But you see that right-hand column? Those are all of the little edits that the editor has made. And then over on the left is this wonderful thing Word has, which is the revisions pane, which I can't stop to keep popping up. Every time it pops up, it chews up like 20 to 30 seconds. And there are 8,756 edits in this book, and that is more than Microsoft Word can manage. So for the past week, I've managed to slug through 18% of a book that's effectively done, just going through and correcting all of the edits. And, so things are going a little bit slow. If anybody's a master of Microsoft Word for Mac, not the Windows version, if you know a lot about Microsoft Windows for Mac, please feel free to reach out to info@emptyset. If we could get that pane on the left-hand side to stop coming up, I'd be done with this damn thing in short order. I think short order.
This might be the longest copy edit you've ever done
because
of the
crippled.
technical thing.
I'm absolutely. I can't get through it. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, turn that off. 9/1 at 1 p.m. in your time zone, we have our Bum Rush the Charts over at Apple Podcasts. If you use Apple, by the way, don't worry if you don't use Apple Podcasts. You're still going to get the goddamn stories. You're still going to get them. We're giving them to everybody. It's honest. But if you go to Apple Podcast and you come up here, see that search window? Search for Scott Sigler Nocturnal. Hit return. You will then see. Look at that, Nocturnal. This is the full original audiobook of Nocturnal, serialized into 40-plus episodes in podcast form. It's ad-supported. You can get it for free. You can share it with people, anything you want. But this button right here, this follow button, tomorrow, not today, tomorrow, 9/1 at 1 p.m. your time. If you use Apple Podcasts, please swing over. Click on this, click that follow button, and we're going to bum rush the chart. See if we can get this podcast to chart high over at the Apple Podcast Fiction chart, and then I'll brag a bunch and do a dance and maybe wear a grass skirt. You don't know. Things could get just bonkers.
I mean, I'm going to make that note, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't have a grass skirt, but if we did.
How do you know?
Do we really have everything? We bought a lot of stuff from Amazon over the pandemic.
I have an Abraham Lincoln costume in the garage.
Did Abraham Lincoln wear a grass skirt? Because I'd like to know.
No, but he looks very Amish, if you're me. And
he does look
like
Amish.
Yeah.
He does look Amish. Actually, I'm not sure if that's anti-Amish because he might be Amish and saying he looks Amish. I'm not sure if I'm in trouble because of that. I don't know. What's wrong, baby? No, not.
I'm plugged them both in, and neither one is charging my thing.
Oh, take them both. Here you go. I got you.
Thanks, hon.
My bad. Change it around. You can yank those up. You can yank those. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I see our guest is in the green room, the very fancy Empty Set Entertainment green room. It's plush. It's tricked out. There's a lot of red velvet.
There's a lot of fancy enough.
A lot of dangles.
Guess that.
And all of our curtains are beaded. Every last curtain is completely beaded in this entire house. So let me give the intro, and then we're going to bring her on. Ladies and gentlemen, I got that right. Here we go.
Hey, Jude. Nice to see you.
Actor, author, and storyteller Tara Platt has hundreds of credits in animation and games, including Marvel Spider-Man, Fire Emblem, Three Houses, RYBY, Legion of Superheroes, Persona, DuckTales, Ben 10, Naruto, which is where I met her on the tour when they were touring for Naruto, Dragon's Blood, and more. Platt wrote best-selling books, Voiceover Voice Actor, which I have and refer to regularly, and the sequel, VOVA, the extended edition for anyone interested in voiceover, with her co-author and accomplished actor husband, Yuri Lowenthal, who we had on Monster of the Week a little while ago. Platt and Lowenthal gave a TEDx talk on storytelling, and they run production company Monkey Kingdom Productions, which creates film, television, web series, and publishing house Bugbot Press, which has published several of their books and comic books. So they do it like us, a little DY action. Yeah. Her other books include Relax Your Toes, a kid's illustrated bedtime book, and Zartana, an interactive epistolary. Shoot, I never pronounced that. Epistolary?
Yeah,
Epistolary. Journal of a traveling Romani girl. She enjoys traveling the world with Lowenthal and raising their son. Yes.
I have to say this, though.
Okay.
This year, I just mentioned Steve Rickeberg's 10-year anniversary. 10 years ago this month, a little bit late. It was August 11th, 10 years ago. We first interviewed Yuri and Tara on our Friday Fix, which we don't do anymore. Now it's sort of the Story Smack or this. But we had met them. I think you had met them in Australia.
Yeah.
And then we had met them at DragonCon accidentally when we were all flying home. And we got to have them on the Friday Fix 10 years ago. And she's back tonight.
And ladies and gentlemen, here we are. This is Tara Platt. Hello. Oh, shoot. Hold on. I forgot to unmute her. I run a high class production here.
Yay!
Yay!
Hi.
Hello. Yes, I only do things on anniversaries. So
Yeah,
like
well,
every
I mean,
10
that's the way to-
years or, yeah.
Yeah.
Someone of your stature and grace should only do that.
Exactly. I keep people wanting more. Just spread it out.
Exactly.
Now, we have access to the chat room. You don't have access to the chat room, but we will fire any questions that happen to come in to you. Michael Grace, who I've accidentally blocked in the chat room many times, says don't block the guest. Got to get a hold of that. All right, so let's get into the book synopsis, and then if we have any leftover time, we'll jibber jab about other stuff. Book synopsis. Sure. Now, I haven't done Story Smack in a while, so I'm going to use my movie guy voice. Ready?
Sounds good.
In a future ravaged by war, a remote boarding school cloisters children with certain proclivities. When top student 16-year-old Anathema Blight finds a graduate's hidden journal, she begins to wonder if they're simply students or pawns in a much more dangerous game. And the final exam will be murder.
You make it
love
sound much more intense. I like your movie voice.
It's a book about serial killers. It sounds like it's got to be intense.
In training. In school,
all right, first
with
of all,
rules.
let's get into the book. What is the setting and the time period? I read this is a post-war book. Is this a fictional war or real war?
Fictional.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we are currently in wars, so it is not completely fictional. But yes, it takes place like the 22nd century after the war, and then the Great Last War, and then the last Great War. You know, that sort of a world where we're just going inevitably towards. So.
And I love Anathema. So I haven't finished, but I've started. You know,
I thought it was Anathema. Is it Anathema?
No, it's
Anathema.
Anathema,
but it's
okay.
okay. You can call her Anathema if that works for you, but it is Anathema.
But I love Anathema, and I love it for a million reasons because I love her because she's this, curious, not exactly troubled, but like troubled in her head maybe, and bright and beautiful to herself. Like she doesn't feel like she's bad. She just feels like she's
conflicted.
She's
conflicted. Absolutely. And that's why I love her too. So I'm glad that that's resonating.
Oh yeah, and I also kind of love the hat tip of Anathema so much, and I loved it so much. I was like, yay! And I didn't know anything about her, and then I was like, yay! She's a girl like I was, but way cooler.
Wow, man, you are a fast, voracious reader. So it's just sort of a general abstract war, or is it any particular group that we'd be familiar with, or just like there was a war?
It's my created factions that have now gone to war. But basically, if you were to take the world we currently live in and sort of stretch it forward and consider all the wars that all of us are continually going through and potentially global warming and all of the things that are happening in our world, and then add in some sci-fi magic to that. I don't mean magic like it's not a magical book, but I just mean like sprinkle a little sci-fi dust on the now. It's my vision of the potential future where people have gotten to a place where they now are psychopathic.
Yeah, and that has something to do with the water in this book, is that right?
Yes. So in my idea of this post-war sort of world, the government has gotten to a place where they're like, we don't know what to do with the people because they're not doing what we want. Now they're fighting each other, but they're not fighting the people we want them to fight. We don't know how to control them. We want to keep them controlled.
Okay.
We don't want them to do things we don't want them to do. Let's throw some stuff in the water to keep them calm. So they create this chemical called poluzone. And poluzone is very effective at keeping people doing what the government wants them to be doing. But the unintended side effect is that it affects the cerebral cortex in your brain. And specifically, it goes to inhibiting the receptors for like empathy and guilt that are technically in a part of the brain called the anterior insular cortex, but that doesn't really matter, but that's where it is in your brain. And so basically they create an entire population, and the world population, a significant portion of that starts to become psychopathic because they lose this sense of empathy, they lose this sense of guilt. And so then people start demonstrating levels on the psychopathic behavioral disorder chart.
So there's a tagline I used way back in the beginning of my podcasting days. I think the audience would like to know, does this book have lots and lots of violence? Because it sounds like it does. Yeah. The
answer would be yes. I mean, it is a YA novel, so it is intended for like upper high school.
Okay.
But I grew up with a doctor dad who we would be eating spaghetti and he'd be talking about the neurosurgery he performed that afternoon. You know, like, so to me, gore specifically isn't necessarily upsetting or violent. It's just a piece of life.
Okay.
But in this story, much like in a book like A Hunger Games, where you do have kids going through particularly violent scenarios and situations, I do have my teenage students at this boarding school have to kill, and there is violence in that. I mean, there are murders and death and dissections and some gore.
And I just said sweet, like that's a great thing. Okay.
And Sherry here in the chat room said, and this is going on my list of things to read. And Sherry, specifically for you, absolutely, because your boys will love this book.
All right. Without spoilers, can you tell us can you tell everyone what Kill Slip Day is?
Yes. So I have my students at my boarding school. Every year, the upperclassmen have to go through something called Kill Slip Day. And for Kill Slip Day, every student gets a slip of paper with their kill slip, their name of who they have to kill on it. And their name appears on somebody else's kill slip. And so if they are unable to complete their kill slip, they cannot kill the other person. They may not survive. And if they are killed in the process, they do not survive. So it's a way to weed down the class every year.
This is like the worst white elephant office party ever.
Or
or
it is your dream come true when you were a sophomore in high school.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The moment where you were like, if I could just take out, Dorothy Brandon.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm not telling tales out of school.
You get to exercise your demons when you write on a piece of paper. So,
right. If I could just do that, my entire high school would have been better. Sorry, Dorothy. I hope you're fine. But no, I don't. But if I could have, it would have been so much better. And that's what they actually get to try to do.
Exactly. But they don't get to pick who's on their list. It's given to them. It's like assigned.
Brian Craig in the chat room says, are you familiar with the comic book Deadly Class?
I am not.
Okay.
I am sorry. I did read comics as a kid, but they were all like DuckTales and Archie and Veronica. I was never into dark comics, which is funny given the content.
I'd love to see the Archie class get kill slip day and have to go murder each other. Because Jughead's, let's be honest, Jughead's got to go. He's been weighing that cast down for too long.
Or he will be like the snake in the grass that you never see coming, and he just annihilates everybody. You never know.
Okay, so since I've read some of this, not all of this, I keep wanting to tell everybody that because I'm currently adoring it. And I want to know if, I know you have a young human.
I do. Not so young anymore. He's 6, but it's youngish.
Yes. Yeah. And I just want to know, as a parent, did your perspectives influence the narrative of this book?
You know, it's interesting. I actually wrote the book a number of years ago. So there's a thing called NaPoWriMo and NaNoWriMo, National Poetry Writing Month, National Novel Writing Month. And I had done NaPoWriMo a year or two before I started this book. And I was like, that was fun. Like, I tried different types of poetry. And I was like, I'll try haikus for a couple days. Let me try that. And I just played around with that. And I had so much fun, and it was so low pressure that then when NaNoWriMo came around a year after that, I was like, well, I've always wanted to write a novel. I don't know if I could, but, I write other stuff, so maybe I could. So I literally, on a whim, with no idea planned, with no outline, with nothing, I was like, oh, crap, tomorrow's National
NaNoWriMo.
NaNoWriMo. It's NaNoWriMo. I gotta write. And so I literally just opened my computer, and every day for the month I wrote, and I just tried to write as much as I could. And I actually basically got a first draft in that first month, just because I would like try to finish not in the middle of it. I would leave myself in the middle of a chapter so that I always had a place to easily start from and then try to keep going for the next day.
Oh, clever.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I wrote like my first draft during that month. And then I stuck it in a drawer because I'm like, well, I don't know if it's any good. I don't know. This doesn't make sense. There's a lot of holes.
And
I don't know.
this was before the kid.
Yes.
Okay.
So then it was in my drawer. And then a few years after that, Yuri and I were asked to do a TED Talk on storytelling. And we were like, yeah. And so we were coming up with examples of, because we chose to do it on how to use sort of the hero's journey when you're in crisis mode and how you can become the hero in your own story. So if you're having some sort of struggle, what would like a great writer apply to your story to help you get out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And so we were using examples, and I was like, well, I wrote this book, but I don't know what to do with it. And he's like, okay, great. So where are you in your hero's journey? Are you finding a mentor portion of it? Where are you needing to build the team? Like, and so we were doing it as part of our TED Talk to like show as an example different struggles. So not every struggle is I need to break up with somebody or I'm moving across the country. There are other types of struggles. And this was one sample example that we used. And so we used that for the TED Talk. And then I was like, I really got to do something with it. And so the TED Talk actually kind of pushed me into getting it completed. So from the TED Talk, and then of course I got tons of emails from people like, what are you doing with your book? What's happening? What's happening? And so I actually did. I went and I found an editor, and then I started to pull apart the strings of the story and do a second draft and rewrites and edits and things like that. But that happened just a couple of years ago when we did our TED Talk. And then once again, I stuck it in the drawer and I was like, I don't know. And then about a year ago during pandemic, maybe a year and a half ago, I was like, I gotta just finish this. Like, I just need to get it out in the world. And so then I actually started to like get another like, okay, now I did the story edits. Now I had to like piece it together and do like series
I am
edits.
so glad you did, though. It is so much fun. It is so much fun. I have one question that wasn't quite clear. The poetry NaNoWriMo?
NaPoWriMo.
Did you do a prep school for serial killers?
No. I just did NaPoWriMo, and
Okay,
I had so much fun doing a poem a day that then when it was NaNoWriMo, I was like,
you were
I'll
just
write a
freed
novel.
up. Yeah, you were just freed up. Like, I can do this.
But I will never again write something without an outline, because I had so many things I had to unpull and unravel when I was working with my story editors, and I ended up having switched story editors because of the timeline, and I was like, oh my goodness.
You might be my favorite guest on this show ever. For that reason.
The audience number tends to peak at this time of the show.
Yes.
So you have a September 1st launch perk for the book, right?
Yes.
Tell everybody about that.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm trying to sort of best the numbers because we run our own publishing company, and so I'm doing this myself. And so it's out in ebook, print, and audiobook as read by me on Amazon. And everybody who buys a copy tomorrow and then sends a screenshot of the fact that you purchased it. I have a friend on Twitter named Eva, and she's going to be collecting all the screenshots and building me a spreadsheet. And I'm going to send cute little postcards that are hand signed that you can use as a bookmark. So as like incentive, thank you for doing that as like the little thing in the mail to everyone.
If they do that, what should they tweet? They need to tweet a receipt. Do they need to name someone or add someone?
It's just like a screen cap of like the fact that they bought it in any format. It doesn't matter which format, just showing that they bought it tomorrow on the 1st, because I'm trying to get as many purchases on the same day to try to help whatever algorithms exist in the world.
Yeah,
good idea.
You got it. And do they hashtag that or just put in the name of the book?
You know, that would be smart if I were to do a hashtag. But yeah, Prep School for Serial Killers is the name of the book. So that's a good hashtag. And then making sure my name is in it, at Tara Platt.
At Tara Platt. There we go.
NeoDiva 2002 is Eva, who's going to be collecting it all, but I can forward them to her too.
Okay.
But
She
like,
found
she's
me
going
on
to be
Twitter
like,
today. I wondered why.
Yeah, she's going to be compiling everything for me so that I can actually
you
make
guys,
sure to sign
and
everything.
we'll also, just in case, at Tara Platt, if you buy it, but if you put my name on it too. And then she's got one more thing to follow up
I'll
on.
watch all day tomorrow and make sure it gets to Eva.
Oh, good, babe.
As well.
Thank you.
I will
Thank you,
also
guys.
say this for his audience, but you are the people who email me, and you may or may not know Tara. You should. And if you don't know Shelf Life, watch that too. It's very good.
It's so fun.
It's so fun. If you copy Scott or Tara, I will make sure that gets to Eva. But I will also say, if you like a Joe Ledger series, if you like The Good Place, if you liked maybe The Dresden Files is a little far off, but not too far off. If you like if you like Richard Kadri's books, if you like Jonathan Mayberry's books, and you're willing to try a YA book, which you've already done with Scott, you should try this. It's super fun and it's super clever, and I really am enjoying it. I have bad feet and I want to walk the dog, so I can listen to this book, or I can read this book. I'm sorry. I can read this book.
All right. Speaking of the audiobook, of course, you are somewhat of a big deal in the world of the voice acting. You may not know this about me, but I have a bookshelf with many leather-bound audiobooks, so I'm also a. All right, I can say I'm a big deal till Yuri and Tara are on the cast, and I'm not a big deal. But here's what did you learn about your writing when you read the book out loud?
Well, I learned a lot about my writing. I drag on my sentences a lot. I need to get a lot more concise and use periods rather than commas. That is what I learned about my writing. But it was actually really fun because I've done other people's audiobooks before. And of course, we did our audiobook for Voice Over Voice Actor just because it was the two of us. But it was a more informational style book, so it wasn't novel. And it was really interesting to try to bring my own characters to life because I've lived with them for so long in my head, but also to try to use a voice that was appropriate for the fact that emotionally my main character is not as fluid as I am. Like, she's a lot more steady and calm and sort of grounded because she can't get in touch with those emotions, whereas I'm like, oh yes, and I like do what I'm doing. Right. Like, it was really fun and interesting to sort of connect to that on a more acting level, but also become aware of like, why did I write that? Looked so good on paper. That doesn't sound really good out of my mouth. And like, I'd never had that experience because when I read someone else's words, I'm just reading their words and I'm trying to honor what they've written. But then when it's me, I'm like, why did I do that? That's a terrible voice. Like, that's a terrible thing to have to put through your tongue. Like, so it was really interesting to sort of be present to that and become aware of that. And of course, it'll affect me and my writing going forward, I'm sure.
So for me, I'm not at all a writer, but I am a narrator. And I have very few credits, but I am actively working to get more credits. And so for me, I have a question about, like, you have so much experience in so many different genres doing narration and stuff, and I want to know if reading your own work, how that works. Did you have a director? Did you do this all on your own? Did you check in with somebody to make sure that you weren't, self-reflecting or something? I just need that advice.
So no, I did not have a director. I directed myself, which was hard to do because once again, it's my own words, it's my vision of the character in my head. And so like I've listened back to chunks of it because I did have an audio engineer. I didn't do my own audio engineering for this because that was just too much to do. And that's not really my forte. But like listening back to all the clips before they were posted up on Audible, I was like, oh, I wish I had slowed myself down. But when I was reading, I felt like I was in a good, rhythm with this. Whereas when I've worked on other audiobooks and I have had a director, I have them to sort of bounce it off of. But with this, I didn't even have Yuri listen to it. Like, I just literally was like, oh yeah, that section was good. Or I need to go back and pick that up. And I would do it. But then, I learned a lot in the process. Right. I'm still very proud of it. And I think that it's interesting.
You should be very proud of it.
I definitely learned, this was definitely something that I think will push my creative storytelling as a writer / actor storyteller in that sense further. I think it can only help me because of course every time you do something you see all the mistakes and you're like, okay, don't want to do that one again.
Thank you so much for that because I can't believe you didn't even have Yuri listen to it, and also I'm grateful to know that this beautiful book you did all.
Working in a vacuum, is that the first time you've done an audiobook where you didn't have a director, or have you got jobs where you're like, just knock it out, I have faith in you, and you kind of did your own thing?
I haven't done, to be fair, I haven't done that many audiobooks. I've done a few, but like that's not my forte. I mean, like I do more animation and video games, but I definitely would say 93% of the time I have a director, but there have been enough jobs where I have done my own self-directing, but usually that's on like a video game where it's give me 3 takes of each line and then just send the files.
Okay.
And so there is variety, but I'm also not reading pages and pages and pages. I mean, the audiobook is like an 8-hour long, like if you want to listen to the audiobook, it's 8 hours of time. You know, it isn't that. When I do an animation, or even if I do an industrial and they're like, just do it from home and send it in, I'm doing smaller portions. So this was definitely a much longer sequence. And because of that, I think my own rhythms, because if I were a metronome, I would speed up just because of who I am. I mean, I talk quickly. Like if you're listening to me right now, I'm a fast talker. I think quickly. I want to move on and keep going. Right. And so that was a big tricky part for me, to try to like keep myself in check and keep myself keep myself more sedated to try to be in the world of the book.
As a very, very newbie narrator who uses your book in the sound booth. It lives in the sound booth, right?
Oh,
like that's
awesome.
how much I love
Yay.
it. I love that you kind of had to learn through this, because that makes me feel a lot better that I'm not screwing everything up. And then
always be learning. Always be learning.
Always. And then this is the thing that Scott does all the time, where he's like, I'm going to give you 3 options. You can pick any option. But for me, I would like to know which option they chose so I can influence the rest of my 8-hour narration.
Yes.
But that doesn't always happen for you.
No.
In an anime. You just like, here are the options, you do your thing. And then you do that every single day. When you go into a sound booth, you... like, I'm going to give you 2-3 options. You choose your thing. Yeah. That's a good thing to know, too.
We have a question in the chat room now.
Yeah.
We've been doing my own audiobooks for about 15 years. Yeah. And we have Steve Rickyberg, who is our engineer, who's always in the chat room. And we have a question. Yeah. Same question in 2 different formats. I'll give them to you both. First of all, Tony Whitaker says, I wonder when an author narrates their book if it becomes a case of being too critical of themselves. In the other version of that, with Steve Rickyberg, who has to listen to all of my outtakes in the booth, when I say something like, who wrote this fucking shit? I get mad at myself for writing. So were there experiences for you doing your own audiobook for the first time where you're like, who wrote this? Or you're like, I'm golden, this is amazing. Did you have anything like that?
I definitely lean. I skewed more toward the who wrote this, or how did I not read? Because I mean, I read the book multiple times through. I mean, through edits and rewrites and edits and all of that. It's not like I wasn't familiar with what was in the book, and I'm like, how did that sentence get through with all the? It's so boggy. Like it's like, how did I let that happen? So yes, I definitely erred more on the side of who wrote this, and then as far as the secondary part of like the pickups and sort of like dealing with it, when I was recording it, because I didn't have anyone else to bounce it off of, like I didn't do multiple takes. I would read it, and then if I had a pickup, what I do is I just yell pick up really loud so I see the audio file spike, and then I go back to right before that and then reread it, and then at the end of each chapter I would go through and I would edit those out and then send it to my audio engineer, who then made everything sound really nice. But as far as like I pieced it all together, but I wasn't, even to go as a callback to your first question about like give 3 takes of each thing, not when I'm doing an audiobook. I'm not giving pickups. 3 takes of each line, or I do pick up if there's a problem, or if like there was a couple times it's silly, but Mithridatism is something that is a real term. No spoilers, but it just means like there's a king that used to poison himself, and that was how he tried to become immune to being able to be poisoned. Yep. But that is not a term. I had read it, and I always thought it was Mithridatism. Okay. So in my head, I thought it was pronounced a certain way, and then when I got to having to say it, I was like, I should probably look this up so I'm not a jerk when I'm doing my own audiobook. And then I looked it up, and I couldn't make my brain say it the right way. So every time I had to say it in my book, I had to go back and listen to it and try to be like, wait, how are you supposed to say this word? Which is ridiculous because it's a book that I wrote, but I still couldn't pronounce it. It's shocking how many words you come across where you've read them 1,000 times, you know what it means, you know it. Yeah. But when you read it out loud, it was like, yeah, that's not how that word actually is. Question from the chat room from Chris Grawl. What program did you use to record the book? I just use Pro Tools. That's our main recording. This is actually, I don't know if you can see, but this is our recording booth right here. And we have Pro Tools set up with our microphones in there and our nice little.
Is your booth air conditioned? Because ours is not, and we're dying.
It
We're
is
dying
not,
this summer.
It is
Can't
not
be,
air
right?
conditioned, but the room that I'm in is air conditioned,
Okay.
and this has a fan that can pull the air from outside into it, which sort of helps. But
So
if it's a
jealous.
really hot day, like
So
we're going
jealous.
into a heat wave right now,
Yeah.
I sometimes I do this in the middle of a session just to
Oh, yeah.
air it out a little bit.
Yeah, we'll tell the story about recording in San Francisco after we say goodbye.
Of course, of course.
But it's very funny. All right, so now the big question, of course, to me is you've dipped your toe in the water, you've written your novel, it's out. It's brand new. You're loving it. You recorded the audiobook. By the way, someone in the chat room, I'm going to go ahead and claim credit for this. Apparently, being on our show caused a run on your book. Your paperback is out of stock at Amazon. So I will let you know that right now. That's what they said in the
Yay.
chat room. So get some more of those in there. And is this the first book of a series?
Possibly. So,
What? Yes!
maybe. So, like I said, I wrote it with no outline and no plan, and there's a mystery in it, and there was a lot of things that didn't tie up. They didn't make sense, and so I had to do a lot of like pulling on the threads and trying to like fix it to actually make a book. And some of the advice I got from, because I worked with several different editors just over the timeline, they were like, you really need to like set it up because this is a great world and we want to know what's going to happen. And I was like, but I'm not brave enough to just jump into the next book. I'm still just trying to get this one finished. And so it's set up that I could continue on with Anathema's story. But I need to actually come up with an outline first, and then I will write it.
Great.
But yes, I have created a world that I could continue on with it. And I've actually been getting some nice reviews from NetGalley because I posted the arc on NetGalley.
Wonderful.
And
That's the spot for YA, man. That's
it's amazing.
the spot for YA. It's amazing.
But I've been getting a lot of like, oh my God, I can't wait to read the sequel. So I'm
Great.
like, oh, so people are interested. Like they do want it. I just need to like craft it and then write it as opposed to just writing for the sake of writing.
Well, I will say make sure you don't worry about that tomorrow. Take your victory lap. Enjoy yourself. Congratulations. What a huge accomplishment getting that first novel out and getting to do your own first audiobook. I got to do that with Infected, and it was just, it was so
In the
much
same
fun.
way
It
she
was
did,
so
I think.
fabulous.
You know, all by yourself with
Congratulations.
No editing or
We've
whatever.
now
Yeah,
known
thank
you for double-digit years, and we're very, very, very proud of you and very pleased you got this book out. We hope you have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful book birthday tomorrow.
Thank
And
you so
all
much. And
you
thank you
guys-
guys for having me on.
Sure.
Of course, and all you guys who normally come to SIGLERinPLACE and understand, I love all the things I love and I don't talk about the things I don't love. So here's the thing. I am loving this.
Good.
So if you love this, or if you love me, try this because I think you'll enjoy it too. And, what else do you have to do in a pandemic? You should try this. And if you don't
got a
like
little
it, you
murder,
tell me.
fun
it's
stuff.
it's got a lot.
It's got a little murder.
lot.
Hey, I got a book. It's got a little murder.
It's got
That's
a
all
lot
you need to
going.
know.
It's got a
Fabulous.
little murder, but a lot going for it.
All
And
right.
I think you guys would love it. So
Thank you guys.
All right, I am now going to go to my very clumsy Zoom hang-up part of the show, which I've never figured out. But thank you so much. We'll reach
So
out to you
good
right
to
after
see
this,
you.
okay?
Sounds good. Thank you
Bye.
guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
And end meeting for all. That was the slickest I've ever ended a Zoom call right
you
there.
did great.
You guys, clearly we've got to work on our backdrop because once again, you and I are just floating heads. Floating heads in a
we're
world of
not.
black.
No, not
Floating heads in a
Look,
world of black.
you guys already know. We told you. We have no AC. We're gonna get AC soon, but we don't have AC.
Oh, that was a brutal. We got a snub on the nose like a puppy who peed on the carpet. We're like, hey, I moved. Of course, I shack up with a lady who has a house. You know how it is. Okay, we're married, but still, we shacked up. And she's had this whole AC rig going for like how many years? 11, 12?
Since 12.
12 years. It went kaput in the middle of the hot heat waves. We're going to do that. But for funsies, you guys, I'm going to have tell the story of us recording in San Francisco the first time she produced one of our audiobooks. So she was there for the whole thing. I will butt in when I feel there's a factual error. I will butt in. But go ahead, sweets.
You guys, listen. Where are we? Which is this?
You're
camera?
right here.
Yeah, okay.
You're right here.
can
We got
keep
the
that
chat up. Let me chat 'em up.
Great. So some of you have heard this. We've talked about this a handful of times in the decade and more that we've been together. However, the first book we did together, I believe, was The Starter, and he was also concurrently writing Ancestor for Random House at the time. And I came up. He had done a tour in July for Ancestor, which I had booked, helped him book and whatever. So I was very familiar. We were already working together. It was a whole thing. But then I flew up in August in San Francisco. And San Francisco has many, many microclimates. So sometimes it's a very rainy, sometimes it's very cold, sometimes it's weird and great. And that's what I thought I was going into. But when I showed up, when I landed, it was like, oh, for the next 5 days, it's going to be 100 degrees.
Yeah. And
I was like, okay, cool. Well, I didn't bring clothes for this, and I thought it would be okay. And then I show up. I have a hotel. He has, of course, a home and, a place. And then we meet at the office, the empty set, Dark Overlord at the time office, and he gets into the booth, and I'm like, okay, are you ready to go? And he's like, give me a minute. And it takes 2.5 days for me to be sitting outside in 100-degree heat, for me to realize what happens when he gets in the booth is he takes off every single bit of clothing on his body but his underpants. I hope.
There were a few times when I was en naturel completely in the booth with a business partner, and this is way before any shenanigans happened.
My God.
Way
like
before.
A decade.
And I'm a good Midwestern boy, you guys. I don't like being of course what comes out in the podcast is one thing, but when I'm actually interacting with other human beings in person, try to be very polite, try to be very deferential, try to be very respectful, and I'm pretty much buck naked in a booth while this lady I barely know, who drove up to do this book, is on the other side of the booth.
And so we did this whole, okay, if you've never been in an audio booth or in a sound booth.
Hot. It had to be 110 plus in that booth.
Or in a Foley room. Part of the thing about being in a soundproof room is you need insulation to do that. That's the only way you get soundproofing. It's physics, you guys, right? Like, so if you build 8 inches on every wall of soundproof things, that's called insulation, and that is not just soundproof. It's sweatproof, it's waterproof, it's airproof, it's everything proof. So he gets into this 4x4 booth. Our booth is 4 feet by 4 feet by 4. It's 4 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet, right?
4 feet, yeah, 4x4 wide, 8 high.
8 high. So he would get in and I could hear him passively in my headphones, all of this, right? And I was like, "Are you ready?" And he's like, "Almost." And it took me 2 or 3 days to realize and ask, "Are you taking off your clothes?" And he was like, "Listen, it's very hot in here. It's very hot in here." But after that, after 3 days, or 3 or 4 days, he would have to do that, and then we'd record for a while. But on the 4th day, I brought a whole bag of ice that we just put in the corner of the sound booth.
Our janky air conditioning in the booth involved, at one point, we got a big stew pot, like a metal stew pot, and we would fill that with ice, and then we would just set it in there because even though it was scorchingly hot, there is a 3-inch lip underneath the door, so the cold air would coalesce around my feet. So at least I was able to cool off my feet to some degree. And then eventually we got to the point where all right, man, look, this ain't working out. We have to take too many breaks, and I know you're getting buck naked in there, and it's all right. So we would, after every chapter, I started to record in just shorts. And after every chapter, open the door, and there'd be A with a fan. Just literally hold a fan on me. And I think it got over 110 in there. It was
it has to, because you remember, you inhale and express. You have a body temperature of hopefully 98.6 degrees or something there, right? So every time you inhale and exhale, that just stays in that well-insulated tiny 4x4 space. And so it was super fun because I'd be after day 3, I was like, okay, all right, are we ready to go? And I didn't think about it at the time, but I often think now what I should have done is stayed outside the office, literally in the hallway, for him to disrobe and throw his clothes in the sound booth.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't be already sweating up the sound booth.
You see Danny's comment. And Scott's first fan was, in fact, a fan.
I was reacting to his other one. It's getting hot in here.
Yeah.
So I
wait,
should have
it
done
gets-
that.
it gets
I should
worse.
have gone outside the whole office, but I didn't
This
know what I didn't
building
know.
in San Francisco, which I adored, it was like my first office. Was I have my own business and I have an office.
It was great.
12 by 10 and I have an office. Except
Hey,
it had
Brian.
the old water. Hey, Spike, and the old water radiating heaters, which you could turn off. Sort of. I mean,
Yeah.
there's like scorching hot to the finger, and then there's 3rd-degree burns. Those are the only settings. So even though we could turn that off, it still heated the room. There were no windows, and it was the middle floor of a 3-story building that was built in 1972. When, you know what, fuel, psh, man, that stuff's free. And there's no air conditioning in San Francisco because they don't believe in it. They've never had actual San Francisco there.
So now we still have that same sound booth, and now it's in our garage here in San Diego, and it's in the corner. Our townhouse the garage is sort of 2 walls are underground, so
Bring
it's
up to the mic.
there.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was doing this. So 2 walls are underground, and it's kind of down there. It's still hot as fuck, you guys. Jesus, it's so hot. And I am about to be in Tara's position.
Oh, yeah, you're going to die
We
down there,
mentioned
dog.
that, right? We mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, it's good.
If
Mention
we
it.
haven't, yeah.
It's fine.
So I'm just about to start re-recording the first 2 books of the Generations trilogy, because if you haven't listened to the Generations trilogy, or if you have, the 3rd book is done by me because we never quite got to we couldn't make the contract with the narrator for the first 2 for reasons. Doesn't matter. And now we're in a position where I can go back and record those first 2 books with the right pronunciation, the right everything, all that stuff, to Scott's original specifications.
Yeah.
And we can just re-upload those and make those. So if you've already bought the book, you don't have to pay for it again. You'll just re-download it. It's fine. But we're going to do that. And we're actually starting that on Labor Day weekend, which is like a couple of days from now. And this is the hottest, the weekend that's coming where we start this is the hottest weekend San Diego has seen
Oh, yeah.
in 2022 and also in 2021. It's the hottest day. Saturday will be the hottest day, projected to be the hottest day in 2
Now,
years
sweetheart,
in San Diego.
I would like to say something here to all the audience and also to you, the love of my life, that if it gets too hot in the booth when we're down in the garage recording and you have to strip down in the booth, that's okay.
Yep.
It's all right, ladies and gentlemen. We're married now. It's fine. We can totally do that.
You guys already know me. You guys, yes, Randy, we're in San Diego, right? So,
All right,
I
Randy.
will tell you, you guys already know me. You guys are my good friends, right? Like, I can't even wear a T-shirt like this. It embarrasses me to have boobvertising.
Wait.
So there's no way.
Read this out loud. Wait, you gotta go to Michael Grace. Michael Grace chatted, sun's out, everything's out. Yes, sir. Yes. You embarrassed my wife, you son of a bitch. How dare you?
I get embarrassed and startled very easily, both. But I will say, like, this weekend, I'm going to do what Tara did for prep school, which is record by myself. And I'm going to work with Steve. Steve's going to direct me. The Iceberg's going to direct me.
Yeah.
But I have to get some things down on tape, so to speak, so he can work with it. And I think I'm gonna probably be dressed in a black t-shirt and black shorts. I don't think I can even by myself get naked in the garage. I don't think I have it in me, you guys. I don't think I'm that girl.
So let's finish up with Tara. She's gone, of course, but ladies and gentlemen, the name of the book is I lost it already. Dag nabbit.
Prep School for Serial
Prep School
Killers.
for
It's
Serial
very
Killers.
Fun.
It's YA caliber, but along the it's gonna be pretty murderous.
100% a summer read.
And
It's fun.
I would say if you're an audiobook fan, I haven't listened to it yet. I'm about to. But if you are an audiobook fan, I am not kidding. She is a big deal in the world of voice acting. Mm-hmm. She's a consummate professional with voice acting. She literally wrote the book on voice acting. So if you are an audiobook listener, I highly recommend that you go snag that and enjoy it. And if you're an audiobook narrator, because I know we got a few in the chat room, you can listen to that and pick up some pointers because she's a
voice acting
sick
for
pro, man. She's
narrators,
real good at that stuff. All right. Do you have any questions?
Sure. Let's see. Chris mentions, no matter how hot my booth gets, I'm closed. I appreciate that because I said closed.
I record in the nude, bro.
Appreciate.
I record in the nude. I'm such a
Not
whip.
me.
I'm such a whip
so
when it
prim,
comes to
you
heat.
guys.
Listen, I'm gangster. I'm super baller if the temperature is like from say like 70. Let's go 69. Oh yeah, temperature is 69 to about 76, 77. If it's below 69, I'm like this, like a chihuahua. I'm so shivery. And if it's over 79, I'm basically a retired Jew in Boca Raton. I'm like, oh my God, does it have to be so hot? Can't they do something about this? Look, I'm all kvetchy down in the nether regions. What am I going to do with this? Now, baby, do you have any talcum powder?
No.
Maybe some Gold Bond.
Okay.
Do we have any Gold Bond?
We have so many questions.
Okay, go ahead.
The first is Mark Odie on Facebook asks, when did you initially create the Generations trilogy?
I created the Generations trilogy, I think, gosh, I'm going to guess 2012, 2013, 2014, somewhere in there.
You published in 2014, so I think it was 2011.
2011. I was living in San Francisco, and I was working with one of my now 6 and counting film agents. And we still haven't landed anything, which is why we're 6 and counting. And we started to work out an idea, and it was actually a Comic-Con. We sat down, had lunch, we worked out an idea. And that's that. He's like, I need to hit these particular points. I'm like, cool. I'll take those, and I'll see what I can come up with. And in the process of like, okay, if I have A, B, and C, and the rest of the alphabet is up to me, what can I do? And I came up with that whole concept, and it was super cool. And I thought it was super cool. I really enjoyed it. So that kind of gave it the start. And then the first one came out in 2014. But that was one of the first books I had where I hadn't had that idea around for a really long time. It was a new idea for me, and therefore it was very exciting and super fun to do. I really like that series. All right, what are the questions we got?
So you also chose to write a YA book at that time, and that was kind of an interesting thing because that was sort of in the foment of all of that. And choosing to do that kind of and choosing to flex your writing muscles, I think expanded your experience, but also kind of gave a new opportunity for us to enjoy.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. It was pretty fun. And even though it's why it's in my opinion, it's, hey, Mike and Mistakes. I think the Generations trilogy, I think it's going to feel a lot like Prep School for Serial Killers in that there's an enormous amount of death in the Generations trilogy, including some pretty gross stuff where people get eaten by animals. It's not nice. So I think that those 2 books will be very similar in that regard. Next question.
I'm not sure who is asking that, but what is more stressful, writing for Tony Whitaker? What is more stressful, writing for Empty Set or writing for other publishers?
It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because writing for other publishers, which I'm doing right now, brings in certain variables you can't control. For example, my brand new editor from Athon Books is doing a great job, but she's really granular in the editing. And you don't know this until you work with someone. So now that I know how granular she is, I know how to expect it, or I know how to say, hey, ease back on the gas pedal a little bit. Let's focus on the more, the more story-driven elements to it. So with a publisher, you get a lot of stuff you're not prepared for, and you have to learn to adjust and work with your business partner. When it's just us, it's very stressful because the longer I take on the book is the longer A and I go without food, and we sleep in a train car like hobos. We are hobos, as a matter of fact. I'm a hobo. A gets to stay here. So when you're doing it for yourself in your own book, there's also an enormous amount of stress right there, because if there's no product in the marketplace, there ain't no wheels of cheese on the table. You know what I'm saying? So that's the difference. All right, what else we got, babe?
Let's see. Scroll down.
This way?
Can't you? Oh, so I've been talking about this
Brian,
in the
you
comments.
cannot. I'll take that. No, because you're basically, what blocks sound is a lot of the same stuff that blocks the transfer of heat. So the more you insulate the booth to make it more, it's sound retardant is the word, but more, everybody's used to like make it soundproof. The more stuff you put in the booth to stop outside sound from coming in, the more you cook inside that little capsule.
And remember, you go in at 98.6 degrees, and you exhale every time you talk.
4 by 4 by 8. measure that out. If it feels like a lot of space, the second you put even a tiny little body like mine in there and it starts to heat, it's a convection oven and starts to cook, and there's no way out of it. Now there are the more vents you have in the booth, the more noise gets into the booth and the more retakes. So the more vents, the more aeration you have in there, the more time you are wasting having to stop for, say, planes or other things to come through and redo all of that. And you're not just burning the artist's time, you're burning the producer's time as well.
And the director.
So now there are two people. Well, with us, it's just the two of us.
Well, there's Steve too.
Oh, Steve too.
Sorry, the engineer.
So we have 3 full-time employees that are burning money every time we have to stop. The way to prevent having to stop is to have as little noise getting through as possible. The way to have as little noise getting through as possible is to button that motherfucker down super tight, and that means all the heat cooks in there. We have fans in it.
Yeah, and I was about to mention that we have fans, but fans, you have fans in your house right now. It's summertime, probably, unless you're in the southern hemisphere, and they add a tiny bit of noise. But if you're in a 4x4x8 space, they add more noise. So you can't record. You literally cannot record with the tiny 4-inch fan going because it's too loud. And Steve will make me do it again and again and again and again and again, as he should, because you guys deserve better. So you have to choose who suffers, and I choose me.
When the retakes come in, I hate Steve Rickenberg with a passion. I'm not kidding.
The good news is you also hate you during the normal recording because you always post the who wrote this shit.
I hate everybody. Tracy. Which way? Wait, we had a GFL 7. There it is.
Yeah, that's fun.
Carrie, welcome. GFL 7
Carrie,
update. Here, babe, take this and scroll down to whatever question you like. GFL 7 update is we are ready to commence the final draft, but I have to finish Shakedown Crypt Book 1. That's what I'm working on right now. Hopefully I'll be done in the next 2-3 weeks, but this edit is so intense, I'm not sure. And then I have to write the first draft of a project I can't talk about yet. So that's the one Rob Otto and I did we did the outline in a writing retreat up in Sheboygan. So after that, I move on to the final draft of GFL Book 7. I hope it'll go well, but who knows?
Yes, and Sean Dyer, you said ice pack held in the armpits. We've done this. We've done every version of this. We've had him stand literally on a 5-pound block of ice. We've had frozen, like gel packs under his arms. By the business, not actually in the business.
Emily, hold on one second. We'll get to
all
it.
that stuff. And the thing is, you are expressing 98.6 degree heat into a tiny, tiny room. Everything you do. So no matter how cool you are, you're still from your core expressing essentially 100 degree heat, and that is unobtainium. You can't win. You choose either the product or yourself.
Yeah. So
the product is the answer.
We're going to go to the lightning round now because we have a lot of questions. Mary Garrett says, how did Scott get into the mind of a teenage girl for Generations trilogy? I may be naive. I think that teenage girls and teenage boys are not all that different. There are some specific outlook, specific areas where there's a lot of difference, but the angst and the trying to fit in and the feeling compromised, feeling like you are feeling foolish, a lot of things like that. Yes?
But you also asked a ton of...
Oh, I had a lot.
Yeah,
I think I had
teenage
5.
girls. 7, I think.
I had grown-up female beta readers that would bounce things off, and I had 2, part of the reason I wrote the book, I had 2, a teen and a preteen niece, and I would ask them a lot of questions, and we had Dr. Daniel Baker, PhD's daughter,
so
who
you
was
had
well on her way to becoming a PhD.
And my niece and your editors, or your agent's niece, like we had 6 preteen or teen reader girls who did that.
So I got a lot of feedback on it, and that was very helpful. But, a lot of it was just the subtleties. Like, I think people are largely so much more similar than different, no matter where you are from, what you do. Everybody wants the same stuff. It's the subtleties of how you go about getting that stuff and how you feel when you don't get that stuff. That is some of the male-female difference in our Western culture.
So let's do the speed round, and we'll get to you in a moment, Spike. That's a good follow-on question. But Emily asks, I'm jumping on late here, so maybe I missed it, but do you have more info on those podcasts you were advertising?
Let's go. Let's talk about that real quick. So we are taking all of the back catalog podcasts. So Nocturnal, the Infected Trilogy, the Generations Trilogy, Hunter Hunterson and Son, Kissy Man, anything else, all the short story collections, anything I'm missing, those are all going to become unabridged, free ad-supported individual feeds on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere else. So everything, all your old favorites, you'll be able to dial in at any time. That is only the official publication release. So you won't get the my original Nocturnal. You get the Phil Gigante version. You won't get what was the other one we did? You won't get the original Infected. You'll get all the finished versions are all going to be up, and we're basically doing our own little podcast network, and it's going to be great.
Yeah. So I will say we're a little bit past 7. I will say before we close out, Spike asked, so do all the professional narrators go through this all the time? And I will say this. The difference is, so I recorded 2 books for an author called Casey Alexander, and I went to recorded books or Random House books in Pasadena, California, or somewhere up there. And that was a space bigger than this room that we're in for me to sit in. Yeah, it's so big. And the room that I was in that was insulated was also quite a lot bigger than this 12 by 12 room that I'm in. And I was insulated with lots of insulation, but also they got to pump in a lot of air before we started. But I will tell you this. They absolutely turned off the forced air.
Did they?
While I was recording, if it went too long. So it could be fine, but if it was going to turn on, that was a thing that the director got to choose to do. So if I was humming along, and doing fine, he would say like, yeah, we're not going to stop for sound. But we stopped for sound even there, and that was like a 12 by 12 room. And this is
oh my God, you guys are giving great questions. Sean Dyer says, and the heating up the booth, that's the inspiration for the Washington, D.C., isn't it? The Washington, D.C. is this CRYPT story that will not be in the script, but hopefully we'll release it another way. But the concept is if you are in a spaceship and you want to be a stealth spaceship, there's only one way, and that is to prevent all heat from escaping, which will cook you to death in very short order. Yeah. So it wasn't inspiration, but it's the same physics phenomenon.
And Michael Gray says, record at night. So if you've heard The Gangster and the Stone Wolves, we did all of that at night in the winter in San Diego. So it wasn't super duper cold, but it was absolutely not hot, right? You know? So
that's me. There we go. That's better. That's better. Sorry, guys.
We definitely did that, but then all the things you have to contend with mostly are 3. There's planes and automobiles and cars and stuff outside where you're recording. And then there's me, who was sitting outside the very hot booth, legitimately in a onesie. I was in my whole actual daily clothes and also in a flannel onesie with a hood.
What was the pattern on that onesie, sweetheart?
It's skeletons.
Yeah, skeletons.
I have 2. I have skeletons and a tiger.
Mine's a cow. I got a cow one.
But yeah, so it's a weird thing because yes, it's there's that concept. I forget what it is. You can either have it fast, cheap, or good, and you can only pick 2. This is the thing that we're doing here. Like, you can't have everything. You can't have a perfectly temperate, controlled sound booth without sound.
All right. Chris Grell says, plus light sources, plus electronics equals more damn heat. We go through that. Usually the first 5 to 10 minutes up, and when we do this podcast, this stream, are pretty good. But I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sources of sources of heat. Electricity, light equals heat. We've got a lot of heat.
3 fans.
So let's ram through all these. Tony Whitaker, I wonder how Disney keeps the booth comfortable and quiet for all those high dollar actor types who voice animated movies.
I know.
Tom Hanks. I can answer this. It's a huge building, and they have a massive electrical bill. So their AC, their HVAC, is on another side of the building, and they just pump all that air through far enough away that the mics won't pick that up. So if we ever get to do any Disney shit, we'll be comfy as can possibly.
And you can see this for yourself if you go to YouTube and Google like ADR Toy Story or any of your favorite movies.
Okay, we'll get Randy next.
You will see this. They are literally in a gigantic room that has been cooled down, and as all of you know, heat rises. So if you're in a 30 by 30 foot room, heat can rise for a really long time before it affects you. It can go all the way up into those 18-foot ceilings before it affects you. And that's what they do in a Foley room on a Hollywood studio. It's a gigantic room where they get to sit there or stand there and do their ADR and do their Foley, the stepping and the clapping and all that. And they still will have to only do 2 to 3 hour sessions or whatever it is, depending on the time of year, because of how how big the ceilings are.
Kyle and anyone else this is so fascinating. Everybody's so adept to realizing that we're in a whole global world where people have different time zones. The time zone, let me get books up. Books bang. The time zone for the Nocturnal Bumrush, 1 p.m. your local time. Wherever you are in the world, 1 p.m. your time, go to Apple Podcasts. If you use Apple Podcasts, search for Scott Sigler Nocturnal. Click on it. What you will see is this screen right here, and you just want to hit this follow button, dog. That's it. Can you see my mouse? Hey, you see my mouse? Oh, yeah. That's it. That's all we got going on. Let's go back. We're going to finish up these questions. Get the hell out of here. Actually, it turned out to be pretty cool up here. It's not too bad.
It's not too bad now because the sun went down.
Lonely Bob says, sounds awesome. We're ready for podcasts. So, okay, you guys got jumped up a notch. David Lamb, don't worry about it. Catch the recording.
Phenomenon.
Phenomenon.
Okay, Alicia says, and cleaning the sweat smell out of the air in the booth has to be hard. Yeah, it never goes away.
It never goes away. I walk into a booth and it smells like me after wrestling practice.
And I walk into the booth and it smells like him after wrestling practice when he was 14 when I didn't even know him.
Yeah, I was a stinky boy. Robin, it's a cow, not an ancestor. It's an ancestor. All right, so I think we're going to finish up here.
Don Wenzel, nice to see you.
Good to see you all. Like, listen, here we go. We're down to the bottom. Alicia says, my company pays those amounts to cool rooms which contain a ton. Yeah, if server rooms, it's not just the servers. The HVAC in those suckers is a mother. Greg Spalding, hello. How are you, sir?
And if you've ever been to Las Vegas, they have legitimately part of almost every casino is their like AC and air filtering farm that is put far enough away from the actual building that you don't hear that hum kind of thing, right? So we have a 943 square foot townhouse, so we don't have that option.
Also, we also don't have real AC.
We don't. We have a heat pump.
Our heat pump is broken. We don't have real AC.
We don't have any AC, right?
Also, we record in the garage, so there's no heat pump. There's no AC. You're in a world where you're at the whim of the environment. Brutal, harsh, a wind that blows from across the land and sucks the heat out of your sucks the cold out of your. All right, now I'm talking about things getting sucked out of our bodies. We gotta finish up.
Yes, all recording studios are the same. They're big enough that their HVAC and their processing can be far enough away that it doesn't have ambient sound that will bleed through, and then the room is big enough that a foot worth of insulation or 8 inches worth of insulation is not going to be oppressive for the person in here. For us, if you open your coat, if you guys have a coat closet in your house, a little coat closet by the front door, open that. That's the booth.
And get in it with the coats. Get in it with the coats, and then just get your phone up, hang out for say 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And see how you feel. Well, there's no ventilation in there. And then imagine that that's not 20 minutes, that's a 10-hour day.
Travis, me too. I'm with you. It's fun. In a world.
Tony Whitaker says, need to line the inside walls of the booth with frozen bottles of Faygo. Best recording environment ever. I'd agree, except the frozen bottles of Faygo will bounce off all the reflection.
That's a good point, but what I thought is this. I'll tell you a secret. We're already over time, so I'll tell you a quick story. We have a neighbor who goes back to Michigan every summer to clean up the family estate and home and stuff, the family land and stuff. And they, because we water their plants and watch their house and do all the things, they bring us back Faygo because he's also a Michigander, but are so appreciative. They brought us so much that I'm sure when we open some of the Faygo from years past, it will be flat. So Faygo, I think we should freeze it, but
hold on. Faygo's made in Michigan. It's perfect. It can never go flat.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Faygo would last 1,000 years in a bomb shelter and or a temple dedicated to perhaps Faygo. It would always be fresh. It would always be ready. There are an enormous amount of preservatives in Faygo, and that is why I look so good, because
it is true.
I've drank Faygo my whole life.
You do look good.
That's why I look so shiny. Yeah, look good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was a great. I can't believe that the chat room went off on the vocal booth.
I know. How fun though.
I guess I talk about being naked, and you guys are all into it. I don't know what to do. I can't help it. All right, so
So before, well, you took all my
Here you
things.
go, sweets.
Yeah. So before we do the closeout, I will say I have some friends in Texas who had a very terrible day today. They had a loss of a pet in their family, and I just want to say I love you guys. I'm so sorry today was the day. I'm so grateful that Nudie lived with you, and I know you guys are suffering, and I love you very much.
you guys are all fantastic. Let's switch over to the shiny preservative embalmed.
The FDO
You know what?
cam.
Listen, that's the point, right? I've always talked about how I'm the walking cadaver because I've eaten more Twinkies and drinking more Faygo than all you bitches combined, and that's why I'm a walking cadaver. Because I'm already embalmed. I'm not even gonna rot. It's gonna be amazing.
So, as you guys already know, it's right here. If you have anything to share, please send photos of you guys, your accomplishments, your celebrations, your pups, your cats, your birds, your whatever. Send that to
Sorry to hear that.
info@emptyset.com.
Emily, I'm sorry to hear that, but you're a very good person for taking on the Faygo. Or the rescue. Go ahead, babe.
Oh, yes. So send that in. Any content ideas, anything you need, anything that we can share on Sigler in Place, because you guys are like us. We're here every Wednesday.
I also have a suggestion for those of you who are beer lovers. Next week we'll be back on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022, which is National Beer Lovers Day. If you want to send a photo of you and your favorite beer into info@emptyset, we will show you and said favorite beer on the show. That's going to be a good time. So no matter how esoteric, it's fine. If you're a craft brew guy, craft brew girl, that's fine. If you like the Budweiser, go ahead and send the picture of the Budweiser. Yes, doll.
I have a question for you.
Shoot.
Live on TV. If they send them in and I can find them here, will you try them?
Oh, my God.
If it's a photo of them
All right, listen.
with the beer.
I will try your goddamn fruity-ass beers, but only if you actually drink the goddamn fruit. Don't come up with like
You have to
skunk
send a video and a photo.
Yeah, send video of you drink. Don't send skunk ass lager. When you want to know what it's like to be in the Yukon for 6 months with no shower, skunk ass is the lager for you. No, I don't want you to just find crap that you're gonna feed into my mouth. If it's your favorite
you have
brew,
to send a photo of you with the brew
don't test me, son.
and
Don't
a video of
test
you
me.
drinking it. And whatever that is, hopefully somebody
Then
sends
yes,
in
I will drink it.
Pilsner. Okay.
All right, so
Something.
we'll be back
Yeah.
next week, Wednesday, September 7th, 2022, National Beer Lovers Day. I'm going to have a couple of soda pops, you guys. I'm not going to lie to you. Who knows where things could go? It could be a nutty, nutty show.
And until then, as ever, we need you guys to stay safe. We need you.
We need you to stay smart.
We need you to say science.
And for the love of science, there may be another wave coming. There's already a new vaccine coming for you guys. Be ready for
October.
it. Be ready for the new vaccine and get the COVID vaccine, get the monkeypox vaccine, any vaccine they want.
Get your flu vaccine.
Get your flu vaccine, son. Get your flu vaccine. It's very good.
And come to Saturday happy hour.
For the love of science, we want you to stay informed. I'm going to go buy Tara Platt's new book on audio. I'm going to have it in my ears tomorrow. I'm going to go
It's so
downstairs,
good.
hang out with my best pal, and I'm going to watch
Is
probably
that me or
some...
Reese?
That's you, dog.
Oh, good.
Watch some Peaky Blinders and maybe get a little crocked because I've had a rough day, you guys. You guys are all fantastic.
We love you
all
so
smell an
much.
awful lot like flowers, and you can all kiss off into the sky.